Step away from that bike now.
It's my bike, officer. I'm unlocking with my keys.
Yeah? Someone called in a guy like you cutting locks.
Look at my hands. Keys, not bolt cutters. Witnesses saw me lock it.
Don't reach. Stay right there.
Then tell me how I prove ownership if you won't let me. I saw him lock it.
Dispatch, send backup.
Officer Bradley Hicks had spent 6 years with the Austin Police Department building a reputation that should have ended his career years earlier. 10 formal complaints documented a clear trajectory. Hicks couldn't see black people with property without assuming theft. A shopper leaving a boutique on South Congress, a woman carrying tech equipment, each time Hicks's first instinct was accusation, not verification. The department's response was consistent: send him to another bias training seminar file, another report, and hope the problem solved itself. But one humid afternoon in Austin's bustling South Congress district, Hicks' refusal to imagine that black men legally own expensive bicycles collided with me, a high school history teacher who had purchased his specialized Cannondale 2 years earlier with legally earned money. And that collision would terminate Hicks's law enforcement career, permanently cost Austin taxpayers $3 million, and prove that documented patterns mean nothing if departments refuse to act on them. I'm Marcus Thorne, a 35-year-old educator. I stood on the sidewalk, wiping sweat from my forehead, unlocking the bicycle I'd ridden to grab lunch. My keys were working smoothly in the heavy-duty U-lock I'd secured an hour earlier. No theft in progress, no crime being committed, no reasonable suspicion present, just a man accessing his own legally purchased property in broad daylight on a crowded street. But Hicks processed the scene through a filter corrupted by 6 years of seeing black ownership as inherently suspicious. He couldn't imagine legitimate possession when the owner looked like me, and he interpreted normal behavior as criminal activity requiring immediate intervention. Before I continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Austin's South Congress neighborhood, or SoCo, represents urban cycling culture at its peak. Bike lanes cut through the traffic, and racks occupy every corner near the taco spots and vintage shops. Cyclists commute to tech offices, ride to food trucks, and pedal to coffee shops. The demographic is young professionals, musicians, service workers, and teachers, people who choose 2 wheels over 4 to beat the traffic. Bike theft is a genuine problem here, which makes owners cautious and police vigilant. But that vigilance becomes profiling when it targets people based on appearance rather than behavior. Early May brings Austin's most intense humidity before the dry summer heat hits. Temperatures in the high 80s, bright sun, and a buzz that lasts until midnight. People flood the sidewalks during lunch hours, hunting for shade and iced coffee. That Tuesday at 1:15 p.m., South Congress was packed with exactly this energy. Tech workers on break, tourists buying cowboy boots, and cyclists unlocking bikes to continue their day. I had chosen teaching as a profession after watching education transform my own life. My parents worked tirelessly, my mother as a nurse's aide, my father as a mechanic. They prioritized education, despite financial constraints. I responded by excelling academically, earning a scholarship to UT Austin, graduating with a history degree, and entering the teaching profession at 28. 7 years into my career at Crockett High School, I'd established myself as the teacher students requested, and parents praised for my ability to make history relevant to teenagers navigating identity and social pressure. 2 years ago, I made a practical decision. Driving to work meant fighting I-35 traffic and paying for gas. Biking offered exercise and savings. I researched commuter bikes and invested $900 in a Cannondale with reliable components. I registered the bike with the city, bought a high-quality lock, and established a routine riding 4 miles each way. That Tuesday, the high school had a half-day for staff development. I finished my morning sessions at noon and decided to use the free afternoon productively. I rode down to SoCo, my favorite spot, for vinyl records and cold brew. I locked my bike securely to a rack near a popular hotel at 12:45, walked to a bookstore, browsed the biography section for 30 minutes, left with 2 books, and returned to the bike rack at 1:10. Standard afternoon routine activity. Legal behavior in every aspect. I wore khaki shorts, a moisture-wicking blue shirt, and sneakers appropriate for the Texas heat. My U-lock keys were in my pocket. My wallet containing my driver's license, teacher credentials, and bike registration sat in my back pocket. I approached my bike, inserted my key into the U-lock, securing the front wheel, and began the familiar motion of unlocking property I'd locked myself 60 minutes earlier. I committed no crime. I displayed no suspicious behavior. I had an absolute legal right to unlock my own bicycle. But Officer Bradley Hicks, patrolling SoCo after dispatch, reported bike thefts in the area, interpreted the scene completely differently. Hicks represented a specific type of officer that complaints can identify, but departments often tolerate. 6 years on the force, 10 documented complaints. 8 following an identical pattern. See a black person with property, assume theft occurred, demand proof, ignore evidence. The complaints against him included detailed descriptions. A black man with shopping bags stopped outside a grocery store. A black teenager with a guitar detained near a pawn shop. A black woman carrying shipping boxes stopped downtown. In every case, Austin PD's response was predictable. Acknowledge the complaint, send Hicks to training, close the file. He attended implicit bias workshops and de-escalation courses. He passed every assessment. Then he returned to patrol and continued making the same biased stops. That afternoon, dispatch had alerted patrol units to bike thefts near the avenue. Someone was cutting locks. Hicks heard this call and began scanning. When he spotted me unlocking a bike, his pattern recognition system activated. Black man, expensive bike, working on a lock. In Hicks's corrupted analysis, these elements added up to probable theft. He didn't observe that I held keys, not bolt cutters. He didn't notice my calm demeanor. He processed the scene through 6 years of bias and reached the conclusion his bias always produced black person with nice property equals theft in progress. Hicks accelerated his approach, hand positioning near his service weapon. Do you think bicycle owners should face interrogation for unlocking their own property? Drop your answer below. I heard heavy boots approaching rapidly from behind. I had just withdrawn my key from the U-lock when an authoritative voice demanded compliance. Hey, step away from that bike. I straightened and turned, immediately recognizing the uniform, the posture, the tone. Police encounter. My mind ran through protocols learned from experience and passed down through the talk my father gave me years ago. Keep hands visible. Stay calm. Don't argue. Comply. Survive. I maintained eye contact and responded evenly. It's my bike officer. Hicks had already constructed his narrative. Bike thief caught in the act. Suspect making false ownership claim. Textbook case. His response carried the certainty of someone who decided guilt before gathering facts. Funny, because someone said a guy matching your look was cutting locks. The phrase "your look" landed like an accusation. It wasn't a description based on clothing or height. It was a description based on race. I had heard variations of this phrase before. Retail employees following me, neighbors, wondering if I belonged in my own apartment complex. Each time it meant the same thing. Your presence here seems wrong because of your skin. I kept my response factual. My look, officer, I have the keys to the lock in my hand. This is my bike. I locked it here an hour ago. The logic was simple. I possessed keys that functioned. Thieves use bolt cutters. Anyone observing for 30 seconds could distinguish between unlocking and stealing. But Hicks wasn't interested in logic. Don't reach, keep your hands where I can see them. I now faced an impossible situation. Proving ownership required accessing documentation, my wallet, with my ID and bike registration card. But Hicks had just prohibited me from reaching for anything. I articulated the contradiction. So how do I prove it's mine if I can't reach for my wallet or registration? Hicks's response revealed his underlying assumptions more clearly than any complaint file could. Guys like you always have a story. Stay right there. Guys like you. Not people who claim ownership. Not suspects who offer explanations. Guys like you. The phrase exposed Hicks's thinking. Black men caught with property always have excuses. Black men always lie. In his framework, my calm explanation wasn't evidence of innocence, but confirmation of guilt. I remained stationary and responded with careful precision. I'm standing right here. This is where community intervention became crucial. A woman sitting on a nearby patio eating a taco had observed the entire sequence. She'd watched me lock my bike at 12:45. She'd seen me walk toward the bookstore. She'd noticed me return with a bag. When she heard Hicks's accusation, she stood up. Officer, I saw him lock that bike there about an hour ago. He went into the bookstore and just came back. That's his bike. He's not stealing anything. Hicks turned toward her with visible irritation. Ma'am, please step back from the scene. But I'm providing eyewitness testimony. I watched him lock it with those same keys he's holding now. Ma'am, I need you to move away from this investigation. A musician carrying a guitar case who had been unlocking his own bike nearby also observed the interaction. He recognized the situation immediately. He called out, "Officer, look at the keys in his hand. No thief uses a key. He's just getting his bike." Hicks's frustration escalated. Rather than reconsidering, he called for backup, dispatch requesting additional unit at South Congress and James Street. Investigating possible bike theft, multiple civilians interfering with the stop. I felt the situation expanding beyond control. You're calling backup because I'm unlocking my own bike. This is absurd. I'm investigating a reported theft. Stand down. There's no theft here. I own this bike. Multiple people just confirmed that. What additional evidence do you need? Should witness testimony from multiple sources override officer suspicion based solely on appearance? Let me know what you think. The second unit arrived quickly. Officer Sarah Mendez responded to the call. Mendez brought 15 years of experience and a reputation for de-escalation. She had partnered with Hicks previously and knew his pattern of creating problems where none existed. Mendez approached and took in the scene systematically. A man standing calmly, keys visible in his hand. U-lock open, no bolt cutters, 2 civilians providing unprompted statements, nothing suggesting criminal activity. Hicks briefed me on what we have here, Mendez said. Hicks framed his response to justify the stop. Subject was unlocking this bike. Matches general description from dispatch. Unable to provide proof of ownership. Mendez directed her attention to me. Sir, what's your side of this? I had repeated my explanation multiple times, but I recognized that Mendez might actually listen. My name is Marcus Thorne. I teach history at Crockett High. This Cannondale is my bike purchased 2 years ago. I locked it here an hour ago. I just came back and began unlocking it with my keys when Officer Hicks accused me of theft. That woman on the patio watched me lock it. I have bike registration in my wallet if I'm allowed to access it. The woman from the patio interjected again. Officer, everything he's saying is true. I saw him lock it. Same keys, same lock. Mendez processed the information. Eyewitness testimony, keys matching the lock. Calm behavior. Registration available. She turned to Hicks with barely concealed frustration. He's got keys that work. Witnesses confirm he locked it. He's offering registration. What part of this suggests theft to you? Hicks defended his decision. He matched the description from the theft reports. What description? We got a report about someone cutting locks. He's using keys. Did you observe any cutting tools? Any forced entry? He's a black male in an area where thefts were reported. That's not a description. That's racial profiling. Mendez, what? Hicks, do you understand you're proving the pattern right now? A supervisor's SUV pulled up before Hicks could respond. Sergeant David Ross had reviewed Hicks's complaint file multiple times, recommended formal discipline, and watched his recommendations get ignored. Now, complaint number 11 was unfolding in real time. Ross spoke briefly with Mendez, interviewed the witnesses, examined my documentation when I was finally permitted to retrieve it, and reviewed Hicks's file on his computer. The file showed a clear pattern. 10 complaints, 8 involving false accusations against black individuals. Consistent bias despite years of training. Ross turned to Hicks with an expression of absolute finality. Badge and service weapon. You're on administrative leave pending termination proceedings. Hicks's face registered shock. Sarge, I was investigating a legitimate call. You accused a teacher of stealing his own bike because he's black. You ignored physical evidence. You dismissed witnesses. You called backup rather than admit error. This is your 11th complaint showing the same racial bias. Your career is over. Badge, weapon, now. Hicks complied, his hands shaking. Sergeant Ross addressed me directly. Mr. Thorne, I apologize on behalf of Austin PD. This stop should never have occurred. Officer Hicks will face a full internal investigation. I encourage you to file a formal complaint and pursue civil action. I picked up my bike ready to end an interaction that should never have started. Sergeant Batts, I said, my voice steady but tired. I teach teenagers about civil rights, about how systems can change through accountability. Today, I became the lesson plan. Officer Hicks saw me unlocking my bike and assumed I was a criminal because of my skin color. 10 complaints in 6 years, and your department kept sending him to training instead of firing him. That's not a Hicks problem. That's a department problem. By evening, the incident had gone viral. Bystanders had recorded video showing everything, my calm demeanor, Hicks's aggression, the witnesses being dismissed. The footage accumulated millions of views. Local news picked it up. Teacher accused of stealing his own bike. The teachers' union issued a statement supporting me. Students organized. Community groups added my case to the file against Hicks. I filed suit 45 days after the incident. The complaint named Officer Bradley Hicks, his supervisors, and the city of Austin. The allegations were specific racial profiling, unlawful detention, false accusation, and failure to discipline, despite documented evidence. The legal department concluded that Austin would lose at trial. 15 months later, the parties reached a settlement. The city of Austin paid me $3 million. Officer Bradley Hicks faced termination proceedings 11 weeks after the incident. The termination was absolute. His name was entered into the National Decertification Index, preventing him from being hired by other police departments. His career ended permanently. I testified at a city council hearing examining police accountability. I teach kids about justice. I told them. Officer Hicks gave me and my students a real-world example of systemic racism. He saw me and assumed criminality because of who I am. 10 complaints in 6 years. And the response was training. Training doesn't fix someone who doesn't think they're wrong. $3 million is what the city paid because Hicks couldn't imagine black people legally own bicycles. But money doesn't erase my students seeing their teacher treated like a criminal. Austin implemented policy changes 8 months after the settlement. Automatic formal investigation required after 5 complaints showing related patterns. Mandatory discipline, community oversight. Why does meaningful action require lawsuits instead of being triggered by documented patterns? Comment your thoughts. This case wasn't about a single Tuesday afternoon. It was about a system that documented Hicks's pattern, recognized the bias, sent him to training, and allowed him to patrol until he met a victim with the resources to force accountability. I paid the price, accused and detained. Hicks lost his career. That's consequence. The city paid millions. That's accountability. But it all required too many complaints over too many years. If systems don't change to make patterns count, if training remains the default response to obvious bias, then I am just one case in an infinite series. If you believe these stories demand action and that bike owners shouldn't need witnesses to prove they aren't thieves, hit subscribe. We're documenting how systems choose training over termination, and we're demanding better.